Hello everyone and welcome to another milk group video. Today we'll be talking about the reports generated by our feed module. Our feed module, just like any other product created by milk group, can be accessed through the web using your browser of choice from anywhere in the world. As long as we have a computer and internet access, we can log in using our unique credentials and then have full access to the data. So this is super cool. The power of cloud-based technology, no more need for secondary remote access software, just next level in terms of data access. Once we log into the platform, we're taken to our main dashboard. By default, we report the data for the last 30 days, but we can simply click on that filter and choose a different time frame. Then here on our main dashboard, we split the data into four main categories: mix and drops, feed intake, ingredient usage, and ingredient cost. Within each category, we also report high-level KPIs. For example, for mix and drops, we report the average mixing accuracy in a percentage basis, so the closer to 100% the better. We also report average mix duration in minutes per load, as well as average drop duration in minutes per load. As for intake, usage, and cost, we break the KPIs by the three main animal categories that we commonly find on dairies. Young stock, so this would include calves and heifers, our dry cows, and the milking herd. As you can see, we report the dry matter per head per day by the three groups, the average ingredient usage on an S-fed basis, as well as the cost of those rations per group. We can then click on View Report for each one of these cards, and that takes us inside that data category and opens up an array of opportunities for us to refine, slice, and explore the data and look at some of those more refined KPIs that we are normally after when we look for the data generated by any feed software. When we click on View Report for mixes and drops, we get access to relevant data about mixing accuracy, as well as the time we spend mixing loads. By default, we display today's data, but we can simply click on this filter and choose a different time period. We can also filter by ration or filter by pens, and even sort the data out by feeder if we have more than one feeder mixing feed. Each load has a dedicated card with a date and time stamp, as well as ration name, target amount for that load, and the actual amount mixed by the feeder. We then display a very user-friendly visual with pounds here on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. The green phase is the mixing phase, and the blue side is the drop part, in which we have the pins. If we hover over the graph, we can see tooltip cards with relevant data about each ingredient. For example, target amount, actual amount, and the deviation in pounds, and the time it took the feeder to execute that action. The same thing on the drop side, the target amount for a pan, the actual amount delivered, and the deviation in pounds, and the time it took. Right below, we have a data table with a good breakdown by ingredient, displaying the target amount we're calling for that particular load, the actual amount loaded by the feeder, and the deviation in pounds and percentage. For ingredients that are hand added, there's no deviation available, but for the ingredients that utilize weight streaming, we get actual measurement from the scale, and then we can calculate a deviation in pounds and a deviation in percentage. At the bottom, we then display a weighted average, taking into consideration the amount of each ingredient and how it impacts the average. Same thing here on the duration, we display the time it took for the feeder to load each ingredient and a total duration for that load. Similarly, we have a data table breaking down by pen the target amount we're calling for each pen, as well as the actual amount that the feeder delivered, which then allows us to calculate a deviation amount in pounds and a deviation in percentage and a weighted average here at the bottom. And those tasks are tracked by the person who executed them, because again, each one is logged in with unique credentials, so we can track the data by user. When we dive into the feed intake report, the user experience is pretty much the same. We have a time filter here at the top. By default, we display last 30 days, but we can simply click on that button and choose a different time period. We can also sort the data by filtering by using a recipe filter. We have these cards up here that facilitate filtering the data by different groups: lactating, dry cows, or young stock, or if we wish, we can see all the groups at the same time, which would include all the pens. We have two main tabs, one that displays total intake as fed, so this is basically averages by pens with standard deviation and so forth. But what's cooler here is our daily dry matter intake per head visual, in which we have all the pens here on the left and their average intake. The user can click on those pens and turn them on and off, meaning that they will be displayed or not displayed here on the graph. And even further, the user can click on this remove outliers button and input a range in which we wish to remove data points that fall outside of that range. For example, if I put 50%, anything below or above that range will be filtered out of my graph, which allows us to eliminate some of those user-created errors, such as overfeeding, not feeding, not using the feed software one day, which we know greatly impacts the average. So for example, here on my graph, once I apply my remove outliers filter, the one feed will identify data points that are classified as outlier and document those, as well as remove them from the data table and the calculated averages, which does allow us to get much closer to what the actual dry matter intake per head is when we take out of the equation user error. We can then export that data into an Excel file and further manipulate the data if we wish to do so. The ingredient usage report also has a time filter here at the top. We default to last 30 days, but we can simply click on that button and choose a different time period. We can filter the data by recipe, or if we click more filters, we can filter by animal category, pen, or ingredient. The first thing to note is we have two visuals. One is called ingredient usage and the other one is usage breakdown, which we'll get to in just a moment. Both of them have the super cool toggles here in the upper right corner that allow us to switch really easily from S-fed to dry matter, or from total for the facility to a per head basis. So super slick, super easy to visualize the data in two different ways. If we scroll down, we then have the data table here that also gets updated depending on the toggle combination that we select at the top. Our usage breakdown table displays total usage, average per day, average per head per day, the highest day and the lowest day for each ingredient. Remember, we're looking at a 30-day average here, which then allows us to calculate a standard deviation for usage, which combined with inventory is really slick and really helpful in terms of managing our ingredient inventory and ingredient projections and purchasing projections. If we wish to get to a more detailed visualization of usage, we click the usage breakdown, and you can see here I am still looking at dry matter per head basis. The data is on a dry matter per head basis format. We have all the ingredients here on the left, and you can see the fluctuation over time. So time is here at the bottom on our x-axis. And this particular ingredient, every time I hover over a data point, it displays ingredient name, the amount, and the date. So you can see that refusals is bouncing all over the place, while other ingredients are more stable. And the user can also click on that ingredient to turn it on and off from the visualization. So super slick, interactive data visualization tools. Lastly, we'll look at our ingredient cost report. Here again, we default the data to last 30 days, but by now we know that we can simply click on that button and change things to a different time period if we wish to do so. We can filter the data by group, or if we click more filters, we can filter the data by recipes, which I'll show you in just a moment. So this is super cool. We have a overall overview of ingredient cost, which includes all pans, all rations, and everything else. We can look at the data on a recipe cost basis, so that breaks down how much we're spending on our fresh cows, low cows, high cow ration, small heifers, dry cows, and so forth. Or we can look at our group cost, which would split the data into young stock, so calves and heifers, lactating herd, or dry cows. If I go back to our ingredient cost here, simply by clicking on the tabs at the top of the visual, we can see that by far the protein ingredient is the most expensive ingredient at this particular facility. We're spending 32% of our cash on our protein supplement. Some important KPIs. This is the total amount of money we spent from March 21st to April the 20th, so last 30 days. Here's the average cost per day we're spending on feed and the average cost per head per day. If we take a more detailed look at our ingredient cost breakdown data table, we'll see that for each ingredient we have a total cost, an average per day cost, as well as an average per head per day cost and the standard deviation, since we're looking at a 30-day time frame. We also show the highest day, the date that the cost was the highest, and the date that the cost was the lowest. If we then decide to take a more detailed look, one super cool thing is to filter by ration. So for example, I click more filters, and in this particular case I'm going to choose the high cow ration, apply that filter, and here we can see that within the high cow ration, protein supplement remains the most expensive ingredient, followed by corn and so forth. We can then scroll down. Here are the KPIs: total amount of money we spent on this ration for the last 30 days, an average cost per day, and an average per head per day. The same breakdown here on our data table: total cost, average cost per day, and average per head per day for each ingredient that makes up the high cow ration, and the average cost per head per day here at the bottom, which is the same as our KPI here at the top. And there you have it, a quick overview of the reports generated by our feed module. We hope you find this video helpful. Nevertheless, if you have questions, comments, suggestions, criticism, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to work with you and address your concerns or help you get to the data that you're looking for. And that's all. Thanks for watching. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you soon.